So what I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna reset this out completely, okay? And by the way, if there's people out there that love the like stronger highlights and that more contrasty look, cool. By all means, cool. Go for it. Let me just show you the same adjustments. So what we would typically do is on an image like this, we would just apply soft skin, and that just kind of softens up the skin a little bit. It's the exact same adjustments that we just went through. And we're actually including, there's, in the bonus section, we include some of our most used presets. So signature color in our soft skin, signature black and white and our soft black and whites, they're all included. So signature color has a little bit more of a poppy look to it. Signature black and white, I wanted to show this because this is really cool. Let's do this. I'm gonna create one more virtual copy. Reset this. I'm gonna do this. I feel like it makes me look better. All right. Okay, let's reset this out. And I'm gonna press V. So this is Lightroom's basic black and white conversion. And if I just compare those two, you want to process your black and whites. I know some people, I didn't know this was a thing, but then I learned that a lot of people like to just black and white the image and actually not process it as a black and white, but there's a huge difference between a processed black and white versus just a regular Lightroom converted black and white. And you're seeing that, like, is this a little bit blurry on, it's like still loading on my side, right? There we go, perfect. So let me show you how we would typically process a black and white photo, because we're gonna go a little bit further in terms of like, we can add more contrast, add more blacks, make it a little bit more punchy and so forth. We're gonna basically create a preset. Let me go back to the develop module. Does this not make me look like a professional when I use one finger? I think it does. Okay, let's reset that all out. So black and white converted. Great. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna do kind of a similar thing where we kind of pull down, actually I don't wanna, did you guys see this by the way? If we pull down the highlights, you guys remember how we said if you pull down too much on highlights it makes skin tones look funky? That's why we didn't pull down our highlights, we actually pulled down on the whites. So if we pull down anything, it was just to bring the whites down closer to those. Okay, we're gonna add our shadows, add our blacks. I'm gonna pump up the exposure a little bit. I'm gonna bring back the clarity a little bit, just kind of soften it up. And if you want to, one of my favorite tricks is press J to turn on your highlight alert. So J will actually turn on this little alert up in the top and right. You can actually see in your image what's clipped and what's blown. So we can know exactly where we're losing detail. So I'm gonna bring it up a little bit in the exposure. I'm gonna put a radial filter over this in that little section, and we're just gonna make it a 0.5 burn, okay? So pressing J to turn that off and then turning off my radial filter. And then this is the trick here. If you go down to the HSL, Lightroom does this funky black and white mix by default, but it's designed for general image usage. Like this is a black and white mix that's designed for overall images. If we want to tweak this for portraiture, what we usually like to do is if I hold down Alt or Option, I can reset this. And by the way, we didn't tweak that, right? So that's the actual black and white mix that Lightroom takes into when you click V. If you turn that off in the preferences, it won't do that. So just a heads up. Okay, I'm gonna press reset. What I like, if you notice here, do you see how it shifts the reds and the oranges down? Aren't reds and oranges and yellows, aren't those all skin tones? So are we not darkening our skin tones by letting it do this to our images? Now, if you had a nature shot, that might look cool because it kind of pulls down the yellows and the oranges and all that kind of stuff, and it makes it look more vivid and dramatic. But in a portrait, it'll actually dim down your tones of your skin. So instead, if you can just keep it simple and just knock these out, take it even back to 0. And you see how her skin livened up again? Do you see how like it just kind of brought it back? So that's something to be aware of. Generally with our black and white mix, so if I show you guys, again, this is the one that's in the preset, so if I show you this, you guys see how flattering that is, like on the skin tones? Like it keeps it bright and flattering. Look at so this is the black and white mix. I don't know if it's like too bright on your side. It's a little bit bright on my side. I'm gonna tweak it to my side, okay? So look at this. This is what our black and white mix is doing for portraiture. +5, +10, +10. If you need to adjust it, you can, but that gives the skin tones in your black and whites a little bit of a kick. Makes them look poppy. Cool? Sharpening settings, everything else stays the same. And then this is the, so if we went back to what one was this one? Let's see. Yeah, that's so if I just go, I'm gonna press tab to just remove both panels, and if you wanna compare the converted black and white, this is our conversion versus Lightroom's conversion to black and white. There's a really big difference there. And I know a lot of people, especially online people, might be asking, like, what do you do about bright skin tones and that kind of stuff? You know, with portraits, if you keep the skin tones up a little bit higher than they generally should be, I'm not saying to blow them out, I'm saying to keep them bright. It's gonna look much more flattering just in general. It looks a lot better than dark stuff. Any cues?
I do have a question that's about when you do decide to give your client a black and white image, are you also giving them a color version, or are you yourself deciding what you're going to use for black and white and what color? And how do you choose what works in black and white?
So usually we will deliver both black and white and color. Anytime, this is what we found is, anytime we deliver a set of color images, and then for the color images that just don't work in color, if we give them the black and white, they almost always come back and go, can I have the color image for that one too? And we're like, but it's not a good image, like it doesn't look right. To save ourselves hassle, we just started doing color. And then whenever we create a black and white, we just deliver it as a virtual copy. So we just have it black and white. The way that our rule of thumb for black and whiting is, if a scene doesn't have great color, but you have to keep it in, this is more so for weddings, because this really shouldn't be happening to you on engagements. On engagements, whatever you're shooting, I mean, you have the ability to make it look however you want it to, and you have the time to be able to do that. So the only time you're delivering black and white on engagements is for timeless moments, moments that are fantastic. They're very candid, there's laughter, there's precious moments, and those kind of things that would look great in that, you know, it's that emotional black and white kind of look. But generally, your color is going to be fine on an engagement session. When it comes to a wedding, we will do black and whites also when we have to deliver an image that's just, you know, it's got crappy light. Maybe they're on a dance floor, maybe they're doing something, there's bad light, but you know, it's grandma on the dance floor. That's the only shot we have of grandma on the dance floor. So we have to deliver that. So we'll do a black and white addition to it. So it kind of saves you. Saves your butt sometimes. Okay. So let's take a look here. Let's go to this one. This was, I thought, a good image to kind of show, like, I'm all for, I love natural light, guys. With all the light modification that I do, I'm a big natural light guy. And I love this look over this one. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but there's something about this is when I remember when our flashes popped just on accident, they bounced off behind us and they filled the shadows, like we just forgot to turn it off. I like the shadows on this, and I feel like it really makes the image and the silhouette. One little tweak I would do to this, like these things bug me, I would back him up just a tiny, tiny bit so that this column is not right behind his neck. So see how she covers up hers, and he's just a little bit too far forward, but whatever. This is one of those times where we would deliver this as a color and a black and white. And there's several different ways to go on images like this. We shot this, and if you look at this histogram, look, is that not a pushed histogram? Like, we have retained most of the shadows, we have as much highlights as possible. It's been pushed pretty well. So we can actually bring this up by a stop, we can bring it up by 2 stops, and we shouldn't be creating too much noise. We will have a little bit in the dark hair, so like there's gonna be a little bit of grain and noise here, but not too much. That stuff was falling below, like it was getting pretty dang dark. So if we wanted to be a little bit more safe, we expose maybe 1 more stop. But notice that we can do anything we really want over the other areas of the image, and let me see here, this was shot at 100 ISO, and it's still gonna be totally fine. Like, it's totally printable with our 15 noise reduction. It looks fantastic. You're not gonna notice any bits of grain in there. It's gonna look great. So if we want to, we can process it as this bright and airy kind of a look, and the way that I would do that is, let's actually show you. I wanna do this. We're gonna go ahead and close down this panel just so we have less stuff to look at. All right, we're gonna bring it up by 2 stops, and keep in mind that this was actually a little bit underexposed to begin with, so if we didn't, then it would be even better. Okay, I like the warmth on it. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna go down on the tone curve and play around down here. So that flattened look that we were talking about, it's created by flattening out. Well, what do we say? We create contrast with whites and blacks, right? So if I just eliminate pure whites from the shot by pulling down on this right curve, and if I eliminate pure blacks from a shot by pulling up on the bottom curve, is that not like a muted, flat image? So depending on how much you want to go, you can go up a little bit higher if you want to flatten out a little more and create like that kind of soft and, whoops, that's the zoom button. Delete this one. Create that soft, dreamy look, okay? And then we can add adjustments on top of that curve. So if we want to pull up a little bit in the shadows to bring in a little bit more shadows, we can. We can pull down in the midtones if we want to darken those up. We can pull up on the highlights if we want to keep our highlights bright. Or you can flip it around and add contrast again by pulling the midtones up, pulling the highlights up, and subtracting out shadows. Okay? So what this just did was if you turn this, let's turn this tone curve up, on and off. Look at this. You can see how we create basically, it's like a matte look to our image. And for this kind of a scene, a rustic scene with, you know, them dressed in kind of like very rustic, almost like kind of hipsterish type clothing, the look of post-production really fits the image. And if your post-production look fits your image, my thought on that is that if you can match the post-production to the image, it's not going to go out of style. We might be doing less vintage stuff in the future. I feel like there's a whole lot of vintage and filmic stuff being done right now. But if the effect is done in the appropriate times, like if it matches the subject, the scene, the way that it was shot, it's going to still be timeless. The problem is that when things don't match, like we take a modern photograph, we apply a vintage filter over it. He's standing by like a, you know, modern Porsche or something like that, and he's dressed in a suit, and he looks like he just stepped out of like a magazine. Then you pop a vintage filmic filter on it. It looks like a modern photo taken and processed that way. So those are the things that we try and avoid in the studio, is that our processing needs to match the mood of the scene and kind of the tone that we're going for overall. And if we do that, we stay that timeless kind of a look. Is that cool? So the tone curve. Okay, let's go back. Let's go ahead and go on to one of the other shots. This was that shot, by the way. This is actually kind of a nice shot. I probably would keep stuff like this, and I would process it just to be that light and airy look. If we actually took that same, so I'm going to take this processing style, pressing Control-Shift-V, or Control-Shift-C or Command-Shift-C. We're going to just copy, we didn't make any local adjustments, just copy it all. And then we're just going to paste it over one of these guys. Control-Shift-V. And then we're just going to adjust the exposure down a little bit. Okay? It's a really nice look. Has that soft and airy kind of vibe to it. Looks great. Does this not look like it was flashed? Doesn't that look like we added flash to it? Remember what we did? That was just the reflector that was bouncing silver light directly into the face. It was really good. I would have worked on that expression a little bit. Probably dip the chin down a little bit more, and then have her look up a little bit towards the camera. Get a little better shot there. All right. Here's this. Now, I know we talked about the shooting wide open. Let's take a look at these. I wasn't really checking too much in camera. I probably should have. Okay. So this is at 1/200 of a second, f1.4 and ISO 400, right? On an 85 millimeter. I mean, that's plenty of sharpness on both sides for me. Like, that's good enough. Like, if you just position them and you get them in the right spots, then you're totally fine to do that. It's just when you're not posing and someone's behind and so forth, then you get that kind of someone blurred out. But do zoom in and check them out. I'm going to go ahead and process. So this is a good one. Great. Perfect. And we have our camera guy on this right side. We have the wall on this side. So the easiest way to fix this, press R to drop into the crop tool, and let's go square crop. Or this is, by the way, if you go square crop and you're like trying to pull out on an edge and it's not pulling, just turn off the lock. You can just pull out on the edges. If we wanted to, we could, I think, did I rotate this a little bit? Let's reset. Just go there. If we wanted to, we could clone in background very easily, but we don't necessarily need to. And the cool thing about odd crop, by the way, is that you generally can't print these from stores without having like white borders. You can't blow them up and that kind of stuff. So odd crops are kind of nice to have your couple come back to you to order prints and those kind of things. Not saying that we do it just for that reason. I'm just saying. All right, so these images are like, if I wanted to, I could deliver these, I think, directly to the client the way that they look. And we try and shoot that way in the studio. We do our best. Our goal is always get it right in camera. But let's do a little bit of tweaking on this. So for this image, I want to go with like a kind of poppy look. Let's just bring down the highlights and the whites just a little bit. Let's add a little bit of shadows to the image by adding a bit of blacks. I'm going to bring the whites back up. And then let's also just drop a little bit of the clarity. Okay. And then I'm going to leave the temperature right around 5800, maybe a little bit more warm. And then we're just going to do our same thing with the tone curve. I'm going to add an S curve. So this is a contrast boosting curve, right? But I get to target where I want my contrast. So I'm just going to add a bit of contrast in these places. I can press J at any point if I want to see if anything's blown or clipped. Okay, if there's anything that has, I'm not going to adjust or tweak saturation on this, it looks fine. I'm going to do my little trick here. By the way, go left to right to adjust color, go up and down to adjust saturation. Okay, so we add a little bit of this. I'm going to make it a slightly more of a heavy effect just so you guys can see it. Let's go to 10. And the shadows here, I'm actually going to add a tiny bit of blue tones. Okay, give it a little bit of a highlight bias. And what we can do is actually tone down the temperature if we want to kind of compensate for that. Okay, so now if you look at this again, this might be a better example. I'm going to cool it down a little bit so you can hopefully see this. There we go. Do you guys see that shift? Do you guys see how it kind of gives the image a little bit more polish? I don't know, it brings the tones all together in a way that it makes everything fit a little bit more cohesively with the shot. And I'll leave the fine a little bit warmed up. And we'll do a little bit of sharpening. We're just going to do our standard sharpening with some masking. Now I'm going to drop in a radial filter. So this is generally, like if we weren't to use presets, once you guys get good with Lightroom, it doesn't take too long to work an image over, but a preset would have, if you're working on 100 images and that took 30 seconds or a minute, then we're talking about 1 second to click something and then 5 seconds to make a quick adjustment. Whether you're using your own presets or someone else's, just my recommendation is to use presets. Okay, here's the quick before and after for this. So just adding a tiny bit of polish to an image.